The blue-skinned alien pressed her four-fingered hand against the communication panel as explosions. Ambassador Vexera could hear the screams of her people echoing through the corridors of what had once been the proud capital of Zalani Prime. Now, it was nothing but burning, ruins, and death. The Korthok Empire had come without warning. Their massive black ships had appeared in the system 3 days ago, blocking out the light of the twin suns. No negotiations, no demands. Just death raining down from the sky in streams of plasma fire that turned cities into glass and mountains into dust. Vexthera's hands shook as she activated the long-range transmitter. The power grid was failing across the planet, and she had maybe minutes before the communication array went dark forever. Around her, the few remaining technicians worked frantically to boost the signal strength, knowing this would be their final message to the galaxy. "This is Ambassador Vexthera of the Zalani Republic." She spoke into the transmitter, her voice steady despite the terror in her heart. "We are under attack by the Korthok Empire. They have destroyed our fleet, our colonies, are burning. In 12 hours, there will be no Zalani left alive in this system." Another explosion shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling as the lights flickered. One of the technicians looked up from his console, his large eyes wide with fear. "Ambassador, we're losing power. The transmission range is dropping." "Keep boosting the signal," Vexthera ordered. "Send it to every known civilization in the galaxy. Someone has to hear us." She turned back to the transmitter as debris crashed down nearby. "We have committed no crimes against the Korthok. We have never threatened their territory. They attack us simply because we exist. Please, if anyone receives this message, help us. The Korthok will not stop with our world. They will come for you next." The building shuddered as another bombing run passed overhead. Through the broken windows, Vexthera could see the massive Korthok dreadnoughts hanging in the sky like black daggers. Their weapons fired continuously, turning her beautiful world into a graveyard. "We are uploading our cultural archives and historical records with this transmission," she continued. "If we die today, at least something of the Zalani will survive. But if there is anyone out there who can help us, please come quickly. We have maybe hours left." The power died completely. Emergency lights cast red shadows across the room as the technicians switched to backup power. The signal was weaker now, barely reaching beyond their own system. But they had to try. "Message transmitted to 47 civilizations," reported the chief technician, receiving responses. Vexthera's heart jumped with hope. "What do?" They say the technician's face fell. "The Altarian Council sends their regrets, but cannot risk war with the Korthok. The Vegan Federation says they lack the military strength to intervene. The Centauri Alliance. They're offering to accept refugees if any escape, but no military aid." One by one, the responses came in, all the same, all refusing to help. The galaxy had heard their cry for help and turned away. The Korthok Empire was too strong, too ruthless. No one wanted to be their next target. "Keep monitoring for responses," Vexera said quietly. "Maybe someone will... Ambassador." The technician's voice cracked with excitement. "We have another response. From Sector 7 Alpha. It's from someone called Humanity." Vexthera frowned. She had studied galactic politics for decades, but she had never heard of this species. "What do they say?" The technician read from his screen. "The message is very short. It says, 'We hear you. We're coming.' That's all." "Yes, Ambassador." "Yes." Those 5 words. Vexthera stared at the screen. While every major power in the galaxy had refused to help, some unknown species from an outer sector was promising to come. It was probably meaningless. They were likely a small civilization with only a few ships, trying to sound brave when they had no real power to help. But it was something. In her darkest hour, when the galaxy had abandoned her people, someone had answered. The building shook again as the Korthok forces moved closer to the communication center. Through the broken walls, she could see their ground troops advancing. Through the streets, tall gray-skinned warriors in black armor killing everything in their path. How long until the humans arrive? She asked as the technician checked his calculations. From Sector 7 Alpha? If they have fast ships, maybe 2 days? More likely 3 or 4. Vexera looked out at the burning city. They didn't have 3 or 4 days. They didn't have 3. Or 4 hours. The Korthok would finish their work by dawn. Send a final message to all civilizations, she ordered. Tell them the Zilani Republic died today, but we died with hope. Tell them that when the Korthok come for them next, remember that only one species answered our call for help. Only the humans cared enough to try. The transmission went out as the first Korthok soldiers reached their building. Vexera could hear them blasting through the lower floors, their heavy footsteps echoing up the stairwells. Would reach the communication center? She looked at the screen one more time. At those 5 simple words from the unknown humans, "We hear you. We're coming." It was too late for her people, but maybe someday the galaxy would remember that, when the Zilani cried for help. Humanity had answered. The door exploded inward, and everything went dark. Far away in Sector 7 Alpha, Captain Jake Morrison read the final Zilani transmission from the bridge of the USS Defiance. His jaw tightened as he forwarded the message to Fleet Command. The aliens were dead, but their killers were still out there. Admiral Lisa Harper's response came back within the hour, simple and direct, just like the promise they had made to a dying world. Prep the fleet for immediate departure. We gave our word. The news spread through the Galactic Council chambers like wildfire. Humans were actually going to challenge the Korthok Empire. Ambassador Zektar of the Reguline Commonwealth leaned back in his floating chair and laughed until his gills fluttered. "Did you hear that correctly?" he asked the other delegates. "These humans from the Outer Rim think they can fight the Korthok. Same Korthok who destroyed the Zilani fleet in less than 6 hours. I have reviewed their sector reports," said Council Member Ythera, her tentacles writhing with amusement. "The humans control maybe 20 star systems. Their largest ship is barely half the size of a Korthok cruiser. They have no idea what they are facing." "Perhaps we should warn them," suggested Ambassador Lakshmi, though his tone suggested he found the idea entertaining rather than urgent. It would be unfortunate if another species disappeared because of their own stupidity. The council members chuckled among themselves. In the 1,000 years since the Korthok Empire had begun expanding, no single species had ever successfully challenged them. The humans would learn this lesson the hard way. Meanwhile, 300 light-years away, Admiral Lisa Harper stood in the command center of Titan Station, humanity's largest military base. Around her, dozens of officers worked at holographic displays coordinating the largest fleet deployment in human history. "Status report," Harper ordered. Commander Kate Sullivan looked up from her tactical display. "We have 47 ships ready for immediate deployment. The USS Valkyrie and USS Thunderstrike are fully loaded with fighters and ground forces. Admiral Chen's Second Fleet will join us at the rendezvous point in 18 hours. Harper nodded. "What about the Third Fleet?" "Admiral Santos reports they'll be ready in 36 hours. That gives us a combined force of 123 ships. "Still not enough," Harper muttered. She had studied the intelligence reports on the Korthak Empire. Their fleet numbered in the thousands, with individual ships that outgunned anything humanity had ever built. But numbers weren't everything. The Korthok had never fought humans before. Admiral interrupted Lieutenant Bill Crawford from the communications station. "We're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting permission to send observers." Harper raised an eyebrow. "Observers? They want to witness our military preparations? Apparently they're curious about human combat." "Capabilities? Grant them permission," Harper decided. "Let them see what they're dealing with." 2 days later, the alien observers arrived at the human training facility on Mars. Ambassador Krelta of the Andromedan League had volunteered for the mission, partly out of curiosity and partly because he wanted to understand what kind of species would challenge the Korthok Empire. What he saw shocked him. The human training facility was built into the side of a mountain, surrounded by an atmosphere that would kill most galactic species in minutes. The gravity was crushing. The air was toxic with industrial chemicals, and the temperature swung between freezing and boiling depending on the time of day. "This is where they train their soldiers?" Krelta asked his escort, a human colonel named Ryan Peters. This is one of our easier facilities, Peters replied casually. We have others in the deep ocean, inside active volcanoes, and in the polar regions. Humans need to be ready to fight anywhere. Krelta watched as human soldiers ran. Through obstacle courses that would challenge powered armor, they carried weapons that seemed impossibly heavy. And they did it all without any visible protection against the hostile environment. Your people are very tough, he observed. Peters smiled grimly. We're from Earth. Everything there is trying to kill us. Whether animals, plants, bacteria, radiation, gravity, earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanoes. We learn to fight back or die. The alien ambassador watched a group of Marines practicing combat drills. They moved with a speed and aggression that seemed almost predatory. When one soldier was hit by a training round, he simply got up and kept fighting, ignoring an injury that would have hospitalized most species. How do they endure such pain? Krelta asked. Pain is just information, Peters explained. Tells us we're hurt, but it doesn't stop us from completing the mission. We teach our soldiers that the only thing that matters is winning. The tour continued through the weapons testing facility. Krelta saw guns that fired bullets at impossible speeds, explosives that could level buildings, and missiles that could crack open spaceship hulls. Everything was designed for maximum destructive power. Why do your weapons seem so... brutal? He asked. Because war is brutal, Peters answered. Other species might fight with honor and rules. Humans fight to survive. We don't stop until the enemy surrenders or dies. That evening, Krelta sent his report back to the Galactic Council. His message was simple and terrifying. The humans were not like other species. They came from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years, and they had responded by becoming the deadliest predators in the galaxy, back on Titan Station. Admiral Harper received the latest intelligence reports. The Korthok Empire had noticed humanity's fleet movements and was massing their own forces. Good. She wanted them to see what was coming, Colonel. Peters joined her in the command center after returning from Mars. The alien observers were impressed, he reported. I think they finally understand what kind of species we are. What kind is that? Harper asked. It's the kind that doesn't back down from a fight. It's the kind that gets stronger when things get worse. The kind that would rather die than let innocent people suffer. Harper smiled. Perfect. Because that's exactly what the Korthok are about to learn. She activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her voice reached every ship, every Marine, every pilot in the human fleet. This is Admiral Harper. In 6 hours, we jump to Zalani space. We're going to face an enemy that has never lost a war. They're bigger than us, stronger than us, and they outnumber us 10-1. They think we're just another weak species that will run when things get tough. She paused, looking out at the stars where her fleet was gathering. They're about to learn why you don't mess with Deathworlders. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of what had once been Zalani territory. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the tactical display as dozens of blips appeared on the screen. Most were debris. Fields where planets used to orbit their suns, but some were moving. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Lieutenant Susan Torres from the sensor station. Multiple small vessels, badly damaged. They're running on minimum power. Morrison nodded to his communications officer. Open a channel. All frequencies. The main screen flickered, then showed the interior of what looked like a refugee ship. The being on the screen had blue skin and 4 arms, with large dark eyes that showed exhaustion and fear. Behind him, Morrison could see dozens of other aliens crowded into a space meant for maybe 10. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human fleet, he said. Are you in need of assistance? You... You are the humans? The ones who said they were coming? We are. We're here to help. The aliens seemed to collapse with relief. I am Engineer Palthik of the Zalani Republic. You're survivors from the outer colonies. The Korthos destroyed our homeworld 3 days ago, but some of us escaped. How many survivors are there? Morrison asked. Maybe 50,000 across all the refugee ships. We have no weapons, limited supplies, and our ships are falling apart. We thought we would die out here. Morrison turned to his tactical officer. Get me a full scan of all refugee vessels. I want damage reports and casualty lists within the hour. He looked back at the screen. Polthik, we're going to help you. But first, we need information about the Korthok forces. Within hours. The human fleet had surrounded the refugee convoy. Medical ships moved between the damaged alien vessels, providing supplies and treating the wounded. Dr. Amy Rodriguez led the medical teams, working with alien biology she had never seen before. Their blood chemistry is completely different from ours, she reported to Admiral Harper via subspace. But trauma is trauma. Burns, broken bones, radiation poisoning. We can treat most of it. Rodriguez worked alongside her team in the medical bay of one refugee ship. The aliens watched in amazement as humans moved through their vessel, wearing simple protective suits, working in an atmosphere that would poison most other species. Your people are very strong, observed healer Mexana, one of the Zalani medical staff. This ship's life support is failing. The air mixture should kill you. Rodriguez adjusted her breathing apparatus. We adapt. That's what humans do. She continued working on a young Zalani who had severe burns across his back. Tell me about the Korthok weapons. What kind of damage do they cause? Energy weapons that burn through ship hulls like paper, Mexana explained. Ground weapons that turn buildings to dust. They use nothing but brute force. No shields, no defensive systems. Mexana looked confused. Why would they need defenses? No one has ever hurt them before. Meanwhile, on the USS Thunderstrike, Colonel Ryan Peters was getting his own briefing from Zalani military survivors. Commander Yextel had been a fleet officer before the invasion, one of the few who had escaped when the Korthok destroyed their space dock. They came without warning, Yextal explained, his four hands gesturing as he spoke. Black ships, hundreds of them, all firing at once. Our shields lasted maybe 30 seconds. Their weapons cut through our hulls like they were made of cloth. Peter studied the tactical data on his tablet. What about their ground forces? Heavy armor, energy weapons, no tactics except advance and destroy. They don't need tactics when they're that much stronger than everyone else. How many of them are there? Yextel's expression darkened. Thousands of ships in their main fleet. Maybe 1 million ground troops. They've been conquering for centuries, absorbing the resources of every world they take. Peters nodded. The numbers were bad, but not impossible. What about their leadership, command structure? Very rigid. Orders come from the top, and everyone follows them without question. They've never had to adapt or change tactics because they've never faced real resistance. That was useful information. An enemy that had never been challenged might not know how to react when things went wrong. The briefings continued for hours, but they were interrupted when the fleet sensors detected incoming ships. Admiral Harper's voice crackled over the comm system. All vessels, we have Korthok patrol ships approaching. 6 vessels, cruiser class. They'll be in weapons range in 20 minutes. On the bridge of the USS Valkyrie, Commander Kate Sullivan watched the tactical display as the enemy ships closed in. There were big, ugly vessels painted black as space, with weapon ports covering every surface. Orders, Admiral? She asked. Harper's reply was calm and steady. Battle stations. All refugee ships are to jump to the safe zone coordinates we provided. We'll handle the Korthok. The refugee fleet began jumping to hyperspace, their damaged ships disappearing one by one into the safety of the deep void. But the Korthok ships were closing fast, their weapons already charging. Incoming transmission from the lead Korthok vessel, reported the communications officer. Harper nodded. Put it through. The screen showed a tall, gray-skinned alien with black eyes and sharp teeth. His voice was deep and threatening. Unknown vessels, you are trespassing in Korthok territory. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Harper looked at the alien commander for a long moment. This is Admiral Lisa Harper of the human fleet. Don't surrender. The Korthok commander laughed, a harsh sound that sent chills through the bridge crew. Humans, we have never heard of your species, no matter. You will learn to fear the Korthok Empire before you die. We'll see about that, Harper replied, then cut the transmission. She turned to her tactical officer. All ships, Weapons free? Show them what Deathworlders can do. The space around the refugee convoy erupted in weapon fire as the two fleets engaged. Korthok ships fired first, their massive energy beams lancing out toward the human vessels. But the humans didn't run. They didn't try to negotiate. They fired back with everything they had, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Korthok patrol ships opened fire first, their massive energy beams cutting through space toward the human fleet. On the bridge of the USS Valkyrie, Commander Kate Sullivan watched the tactical display as the enemy weapons approached. Incoming. Fire, reported Lieutenant Dan Cross from the weapons station. 6 heavy plasma beams, direct hits on our forward ships. The energy beams struck the human vessels with enough force to vaporize most alien ships. But the USS Defiance and USS Thunderstrike simply shrugged off the impacts, their thick armor plating glowing red-hot but holding firm. "Return fire," ordered Admiral Harper over the fleet communication system. The human response was swift and devastating. Dozens of railgun rounds shot out from the human ships at incredible speed, crossing the distance between the fleets in seconds. The Korthok shields flickered under the impact and collapsed completely. Commander Grachtel of the Korthok patrol fleet stared at his damage reports in disbelief. How did their weapons penetrate our shields so easily? His tactical officer looked equally confused. Unknown Commander. The projectiles are primitive metal slugs, but they're moving at impossible speeds. Our shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not kinetic impacts. "Fire again," Grachtel ordered. "Destroy them all." The second volley of Korthok plasma beams struck the human ships with even more power than before. The USS Defiance took a direct hit to its main hull, the impact lighting up the entire ship in brilliant energy. But when the light faded, the ship was still there, still fighting. Captain Jake Morrison felt the deck shake under his feet as the enemy fire struck his ship. "Damage report," he called out. "Hull breach on Deck 7, but the emergency bulkheads are holding," reported his damage control officer. "Armor is holding at 70%. We can take a lot more of this." Morrison smiled grimly. The Korthok had probably never fought ships. Built to survive the crushing pressure of Earth's deep oceans and the radiation storms of Sol's outer system, human ships weren't just warships. They were built like bunkers that could fly. "Target their lead cruiser," Morrison ordered. Full spread of torpedoes. The USS Defiance launched 12 heavy torpedoes, each one carrying enough explosive power to crack a small moon. The Korthok commander watched them approach on his screen, confident that his ship's armor could handle the primitive human weapons. He was wrong. The torpedoes struck the Korthok cruiser and detonated in sequence, each explosion tearing deeper into the enemy hull. The first torpedo cracked the outer armor. The second blew through the inner hull. The third reached the power core and turned the entire ship into an expanding ball of fire and debris. "Impossible," whispered Grachtel as he watched his flagship die. "No one has ever destroyed a Korthok cruiser in single combat." The human fleet pressed their attack. Unlike the Korthok, who relied on overwhelming firepower and superior technology, the humans fought with tactics and coordination. Their ships moved in formation, covering each other's weak points and concentrating fire on individual targets. Within 30 minutes, all 6 Korthok patrol ships were destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had lost no ships and taken only minor damage. "Send a message to Korthok High Command," Admiral Harper ordered. "Tell them we're coming for them." The news of the patrol fleet's destruction reached the Korthok Empire within hours. Emperor Morgthal sat on his throne of black metal, reading the battle reports with growing rage. In 300 years of conquest, no enemy had ever defeated a Korthok fleet in open combat. "These humans destroyed 6 of our cruisers with no losses," he demanded. General Vexamer, commander of the Korthok military, nodded reluctantly. "The survivors report that human ships are incredibly tough and their weapons are surprisingly effective. They fight with tactics we've never seen before. They are just another weak species," Morgthal snarled. "Send a full battle fleet to crush them?" "Yes, Emperor. But perhaps we should study their tactics first. Learn how they No, Morkval interrupted. The Korthak Empire does not learn from inferior species. We destroy them. Send Admiral Krextal with 100 ships. End this quickly. While the Korthak prepared their counterattack, the human fleet was already moving deeper into former Zilani territory. Admiral Harper had divided her forces, sending fast scout ships to gather intelligence, while the main fleet protected the refugee convoy. Captain Alex Turner commanded one of these scout missions aboard, the USS Ranger. His ship was small and fast, designed for reconnaissance rather than combat, but what he discovered would change everything. Admiral Turner reported via subspace communication, "We've found a Korthak supply depot on the fourth planet of the Kepler system." But that's not the important part. Harper's voice crackled through the static. "What did you find, Captain?" "Mass graves, Admiral. Millions of them. We're detecting remains from at least 20 different species. The Korthak have been doing this for a long time." Turner's crew had landed on the planet's surface, finding evidence of systematic genocide on a scale that shocked even hardened military veterans. Entire cities had been leveled, populations had been herded into killing grounds, and bodies had been dumped in massive pits that stretched for kilometers. "This isn't conquest," Turner continued his report. "This is extermination." They're not trying to rule these species, they're trying to wipe them out completely. The discovery hardened human resolve. This was no longer just about helping the Zilani, or even stopping the Korthak expansion. This was about stopping a threat to all life in the galaxy. Meanwhile, General Tim Washington was preparing for the first human ground assault on a Korthak-held world. His Marines had studied the intelligence reports and developed new tactics, specifically for fighting the enemy soldiers. Remember Washington told his troops as they prepared for the drop? "The Korthak are bigger and stronger than us individually, but they're used to fighting enemies who break and run when things get tough. They've never fought humans before." The Marine transport ships approached the planet under cover of the fleet's guns. The Korthak garrison was expecting another easy victory against weak aliens. Instead, they were about to meet soldiers from a world where everything was trying to kill you, and the only response was to fight back harder. The first human boots hit Korthak soil, and the galaxy's deadliest predators began to hunt. The alarm sirens wailed across Zilani Prime as the largest space battle in Galactic history began above the planet's scarred surface. Admiral Lisa Harper stood on the bridge of the USS Valkyrie, watching as 1,000 Korthak ships emerged from hyperspace around the dead homeworld. "Contact report," she ordered calmly. Commander Kate Sullivan looked up from her tactical display, her face grim. "Enemy fleet count at 947 vessels. Dreadnoughts, battlecruisers, carriers, and support ships. They outnumber us 8-1, Harper nodded. The odds were exactly what she had expected. Korthak Empire had sent everything they had to crush the human fleet and end this war quickly. They thought numbers would be enough. "Signal the fleet," Harper commanded. "All ships to attack Formation Delta. Fighter squadrons launch immediately. Show them what happens when you corner a Death Worlder." Across the human fleet, pilots ran to their fighters as launch bays opened. Commander Julie Bennett led the first squadron off the USS Thunderstrike, her small fighter shooting out into space, toward the massive enemy fleet. "This is Raptor leader to all squadrons," she broadcast. "Remember your training. The Korthak fighters are big and heavily armed, but they're slow and predictable. Use your speed and stay in formation." The space around Zilani Prime erupted into chaos as 2,000 fighters clashed in the void between the main fleets. The Korthak pilots had never faced human fighters before. Sleek, fast ships that moved like angry wasps around their heavy interceptors. Bennett rolled her fighter under. A stream of plasma fire then came up behind a Korthak interceptor, a railgun. Rounds punched through the enemy's armor like it was paper. The alien ship exploded in a burst of flame and debris. "Splash 1, she reported, already turning toward her next target. The main fleets opened fire at the same time, filling space. With energy beams and projectile weapons, the first volleys lit up the darkness as shields flared. And armor sparked under the incredible impacts. The USS Defiance took the lead. Captain Jake Morrison pushing his ship straight into the heart of the enemy formation, Korthak plasma beams hammered against his hull, but the ship kept coming, returning fire with everything it had. "Direct hit on their command ship," reported Morrison's tactical officer. "Their shields are down." "Launch torpedoes," Morrison ordered. Full spread. 24 heavy torpedoes shot out from the Defiance, each one locked onto the massive Korthok flagship. The enemy point defense systems managed to stop half of them, but the rest struck home. The flagship's hull cracked open like an egg atmosphere, and debris streaming out into space, but the Korthok had numbers on their side. For every enemy ship the humans destroyed, 2 more took its place. Admiral Harper watched her tactical display as red icons representing damaged human ships began to appear. The USS Ranger took a direct hit from 3 Korthok dreadnoughts, her hull splitting open and spilling crew into the vacuum. The USS Storm lost her engines and began drifting helplessly as enemy fighters swarmed around her. Admiral Commander Sullivan reported, "We're taking heavy casualties. The Wolverine and Shark are both gone. The Phoenix is badly damaged and requesting permission to withdraw." Harper's jaw tightened. They were losing ships faster than they could replace them, but withdrawal wasn't an option. Too much depended on this battle. Negative on the withdrawal. She replied, "Signal Captain Ben Clark on the destroyer squadron. Time for the knife fight." Captain Clark commanded a squadron of 6 destroyers, the smallest and fastest ships in the human fleet. His ships had been hanging back during the main battle, waiting for their moment. "Destroyer Squadron Alpha, this is Clark," he broadcast. "We're going in. Target the enemy carriers. Hit 'em fast and get out." The 6 destroyers shot forward at maximum speed, weaving between the larger ships of both fleets. They were outnumbered and outgunned. But they were also too small and fast for the big Korthok ships to track effectively. Clark's ship, the USS Viper, dove under a massive enemy battlecruiser and came up behind a Korthok carrier. The carrier was huge, easily 10 times the size of his destroyer, but it was also unprotected. "Full torpedoes spread on the carrier," Clark ordered. The Viper launched every torpedo it had, then spun away as the carrier's point defense systems tried to track the small ship. Most of the torpedoes hit their target, punching deep into the carrier's hull and setting off secondary explosions throughout the ship. The carrier began breaking apart, its fighter bays exploding one by one as stored fuel and ammunition cooked off. Dozens of Korthok fighters were destroyed before they could launch, tilting the balance of the fighter battle in humanity's favor, but Clark's victory came at a cost. Enemy fire caught the Viper as she tried to escape, energy beams slicing through her hull like a sword through cloth. The destroyer exploded in a ball of fire, taking Clark and his entire crew with her. Down on the planet's surface, General Tim Washington was fighting his own battle. His Marines had landed under cover of the space battle above, establishing a beachhead near the ruins of the Zalani capital city. The Korthok ground forces came at them in waves. Gray-skinned warriors in black armor charging across the broken landscape. They were bigger and stronger than humans, but they fought with no imagination, simply advancing in straight lines and trusting their superior firepower to win. Washington's Marines had prepared for this. They used the ruined buildings as cover, setting up crossfires and ambush points that turned the urban battlefield into a killing ground. "Here they come again," called out Sergeant Pete Davies from his position behind a collapsed wall. 200 meters and closing. The Marines opened fire with everything they had. Railgun rounds and explosive shells tore into the advancing Korthok, but the aliens kept coming. They had never learned to fear casualties because they had never faced an enemy that could actually hurt them. "Fall back to checkpoint Bravo," Washington ordered. "Make them pay for every meter." The Marines began a fighting withdrawal through the ruins, using hit-and-run tactics that confused and frustrated the Korthok commanders. Every time the aliens thought they had cornered the humans, the Marines would disappear into the rubble and emerge somewhere else, striking from an unexpected direction. Above them, the space battle raged on. Both fleets had taken massive casualties, but neither side was willing to retreat. The humans fought with the desperate courage of a species that had never learned to give up. The Korthok fought with the arrogance of conquerors who had never known defeat. But slowly, Human tactics and determination began to tell. Their ships were tougher, their crews were more flexible, and their leaders were willing to take risks that no Korthok commander would consider. The tide of battle was turning. The battle above Zalani Prime had raged for 18 hours. Fleets were battered and bloodied, their formations broken by the constant fighting. But as the local sun began to rise over the scarred planet, it became clear who had won. Admiral Lisa Harper stood on the bridge of the USS Valkyrie, watching the last Korthok ships retreat into hyperspace. Around her, the debris of 1,000 destroyed vessels drifted in the void, testament to the ferocity of the battle that had just ended. Final casualty report, she requested quietly. Commander Kate Sullivan looked up from her console, her face tired but victorious. We lost 47 ships and 8,000 crew members. The Korthok lost over 600 ships, including their flagship and most of their command structure. Harper nodded slowly. The price had been high, but they had broken the back of the Korthok Empire. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's greatest threat had been defeated in open battle. Signal the remaining Korthok forces, Harper ordered. Offer them terms for surrender. The response came within minutes. General Vexamer, now the highest-ranking Korthok officer left alive, appeared on the main screen. His gray face showed defeat and disbelief. The Korthok Empire does not surrender, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Harper looked at him steadily. Your empire is finished, General. Your fleets are destroyed, your emperor is dead, and your homeworld is blockaded by human ships. You can surrender now and live, or you can keep fighting and watch your entire species die. Vexamer was silent for a long moment. Behind him, Harper could see other Korthok officers watching the conversation. They looked tired and beaten, no longer the arrogant conquerors who had terrorized the galaxy. What are your terms? Vexamer finally asked. Complete withdrawal from all conquered territories. Reparations to the species you've destroyed. And guarantee that you will never again attack peaceful civilizations. And if we agree to these terms... Harper's expression softened slightly. Then we help you rebuild. Humans don't believe in genocide, General. We believe in second chances. The formal surrender took place 3 days later aboard the USS Thunderstrike. Representatives from dozens of alien species came to witness the end of the Korthok Empire. But what surprised them most was what happened next. Instead of claiming the conquered territories for themselves, the humans immediately began establishing humanitarian aid stations throughout the former war zone. Medical ships brought supplies to refugee populations. Engineering crews helped rebuild damaged infrastructure. Human Marines provided security for worlds that had known only fear for decades. Captain Jake Morrison found himself in command of the relief effort on Zalani Prime. His ship had survived the Great Battle with heavy damage, but Morrison and his crew were already working to help the planet heal. How many survivors have we found? He asked Dr. Amy Rodriguez as they toured the ruins of the capital city. About 2 million scattered across the planet, Rodriguez replied. Most are hiding in underground shelters. They're afraid to come out because they think the Korthok are still here. Morrison nodded. It would take time for the survivors to trust again, but gradually word spread that the humans were different. They weren't conquerors. They were protectors. Engineer Polthik, one of the original refugee survivors, had returned to his homeworld to help with the rebuilding effort. He worked alongside human engineers, amazed by their dedication to helping a species they had never met before. Why do you do this? He asked Lieutenant Dan Cross, who was helping to repair a water treatment plant. Your people died fighting for us. Why do you now give us aid with no payment? Cross looked up from his work, wiping sweat from his forehead. Because it's the right thing to do. Your people called for help, and we answered. The fighting is over. But the helping isn't. The news of humanity's victory spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The Galactic Council, which had refused to help the Zalani, now wanted to meet with these mysterious humans who had accomplished the impossible. Ambassador Krelta, who had observed human military training months earlier, found himself appointed as the Council's representative to humanity. He traveled to Earth for the first formal diplomatic meeting between humans and the galactic community. What he found there changed his understanding of what humans truly were. Earth was a nightmare. World by galactic standards, violent weather, crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, and predators that would terrify most civilized species. But humans had not just survived here, they had thrived. "This is where you come from?" Krelta asked Admiral Harper as they stood on a balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Below them, waves crashed against the shore with enough force to shatter bones. "This is our home," Harper replied simply. "Everything here taught us to be strong, to adapt, and to never give up. But it also taught us something else." "What is that?" Harper smiled. "That survival is easier when you help each other. The strongest human tribe was never the one with the best weapons. It was the one that took care of its people." The formal negotiations took place in the United Nations building in New York. Representatives from hundreds of alien species came to witness the creation of the Terran Defense Compact, humanity's promise to protect any civilization threatened. With extinction, Ambassador Vexthera, the Zalani diplomat who had sent the original distress call, was given the honor of signing the compact first. Her hand shook as she put her name to the document that would reshape galactic politics. "When I sent that message," she said to the assembled delegates, "I thought we were going to die forgotten and alone. Instead, we learned that somewhere in the galaxy there were people who cared about strangers. People who would risk everything to do what was right." She looked out at the human delegation. "The galaxy called us the Death Worlders. A mistake. No, you are not Death Worlders. You are Life Springers." Months later, as new distress signals began reaching human space from distant star, Systems Admiral Harper sat in her command center on Titan Station. The first signal was from a species called the Altani, under attack by pirates. The second was from the vegan colonies threatened by a plague outbreak. Her communications officer looked up from his console. "Admiral, how should we respond?" Harper smiled, remembering the words that had started it all. She activated the fleet-wide communication system, her voice reaching every human ship in the galaxy. "Signal the Altani and the vegans," she ordered. "Tell them we hear them." She paused, looking out at the stars where her ships were already preparing for departure. "Tell them we're coming." The age of human protection had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.